Hi, I'm Dave Atkinson, and welcome to Life on the Straight. For this great adventure series, I'll be reading from my 3-volume book, The Yonder Years, and this video will be providing a little more content than what is in the book. In this segment, we spend 2 weeks within Yellowstone National Park, our most favorite place during our entire 2-year adventure. Thank you for following Life on the Straight. If you enjoy this content, please subscribe to this channel, which is free, and like and share as well. And now the Yonder Years. When we were downloading the backlog of emails looking for our house offer, an email arrived from one of our Coeur d'Alene Business Park tenants, and this is the same one whose space we parked behind earlier. Of our 3 tenants, he was and had always been a pain in the hindquarters. His business was supplying food, weapons, and other supplies to survivalists, and in addition to being a certified conspiracy theory kook, he was always complaining about what the other tenants were doing or not doing. The email wanted me to confront our newest tenant about people parking in quote-unquote his parking spaces. And I should note that there never was reserved parking spaces for tenants' customers, even if they were directly in front of their storefronts. Basically, this email was the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back. I sent him a reply saying that he had been a good tenant since 2008, but the chemistry had never been good between him and the other tenants that we've had over the years, and that when his lease expired at the end of November, we would not be renewing it. Suffice it to say that the next several months leading up to his lease expiration date would be chock full of trauma and drama. But most importantly, it would alter our travel plans significantly because when November 30th came around, we would need to be in Coeur d'Alene to secure the space that he was vacating and to arrange for signing a lease with a new tenant. Therefore, we would be spending the next 6 to 7 months in the Pacific Northwest region of our country. But let's get back to Yellowstone. We couldn't help but notice how popular Yellowstone was with foreign tourists, especially from Asia. Most of them made their way throughout the vast park in tour buses, but a significant number also drove rental cars and even RVs. The speed limits within Yellowstone vary, but there are stretches where you can go 45 or 50, except when you get behind an Asian driver. Then you're going 20 to 25, with no turn signals when they turn off the main road. I don't mean to pile on to Asian tourists, but 2 other anecdotes come to mind. One was in a campsite next to our rig, but in the next aisle over, and our rigs were back to back, except they were 2 spaces over. If memory serves, there were 2 couples, maybe more, that backed the rental trailer into the campsite. The exterior of their trailer had several compartments with locking doors. All through the night, hour after hour, they opened the compartments and slammed them shut. We had made friends with a couple from Canada who arrived in a Winnebago Adventurer motorhome that backed right up to our rig, and their son and his family who parked next to them in his own coach. After a day of sightseeing, we would sit around a campfire and drink homemade wine and cinnamon-flavored whiskey and share our stories. We became pen pals of sorts, exchanging emails long after our adventure had come to an end. Anyway, one evening after we returned from our excursion, we noticed that the Asians with the trailer were gone. That brought a chuckle from our new Canadian friends. The son noticed that they were in the car and were getting ready to drive away, but the trailer's leveling jacks were still extended. He went over and pounded on the car, and of course there was a language barrier, and finally got the driver to get out and to look at the extended jacks. That could have been a real trip ruiner right there. The second anecdote has to do with the way they were dressed. Not with a jacket, jeans, and hiking boots or tennis shoes, but with skirts, dresses, and high-heeled shoes. Amy and I pulled off the road at the Mud Volcano Trail, and there was a boardwalk and stairs going up the hillside to the Black Dragon's Cauldron at the top, where the trail loops around and back to the parking lot. It was a steep gravel trail going down the hillside, and here in front of us was an Asian woman in a black dress and high heels taking a photo of another Asian woman. All we could think about was what a difference in cultures. When you are driving or walking the numerous trails throughout the park, you will notice that bison are commonplace. Bears, on the other hand, are not. In fact, when you are driving and come upon cars and traffic all at a standstill, it usually means that a bear has been spotted. The tourists just park their cars on the side of the road if they can, or in the middle of the road if they can't, grab their cameras and get out to see them. On the 9th, we were out visiting some geysers and paint pots when we came upon a traffic backup. Running parallel to the road was the Firehole River, and on the lush grassy hillside coming down towards the river was a mama grizzly bear and her cub. I didn't have that high end of a camera, but I changed out the wide-angle lens for the zoom and was able to get several memorable photos as the two bears got into the river, first the mama and reluctantly the cub, and headed downstream to the bank that we were all standing on. Everyone began running towards their cars, afraid that the grizzly would go after them as a way of protecting her cub, but she didn't do that. The cub's head was all that you could see above water as it was trying to keep pace with its mama. Finally, they made it out of the river and headed north into the woods. What a moment that was for all of us. We had several interesting moments with bison as well. The most memorable was when we were driving through the Lamar Valley, headed towards the northeast entrance station. We rounded a curve only to come to a complete stop. 5 bison were walking down the road directly at us, pretty much taking up the entire road. We made sure that we kept our windows up, and as they approached us and essentially flowed around the cars, we took plenty of video footage. Another moment was on our way from Fishing Bridge towards the Mud Volcano. I was driving the speed limit, which was either 35 or 45, when I spotted something in my peripheral vision. Suddenly, a bison appeared in the woods to my left, running like its life depended on it, and was headed straight for our car. It happened so fast, but I had barely gotten out of its way. I could see it whiz on by in my rearview mirror. It probably missed us by a yard or so, if that. That first bison encounter took place as we were heading towards the Beartooth All-American Highway, the scenic drive that our fellow campers in Bozeman told us about. The Beartooth Highway is an engineering tour de force, snaking through the mountains and climbing up to an elevation of nearly 11,000 feet. The highway goes from Wyoming to Montana and back down to Wyoming and back up into Montana again, finally ending in the town of Red Lodge. There is an abundance of spectacular mountains, waterfalls, and lakes to take in. It was simply a breathtaking way to spend the day. From Red Lodge, we headed south towards Cody, Wyoming, traveling on several minor roads. In Cody, we linked up with US 14, which took us straight back to Fishing Bridge. It was a full day of driving, 275 miles, but worth every minute. You can easily fill up 2 weeks by never leaving the boundaries of the national park, but in addition to the Beartooth Highway, we also spent a day in Cody and another day in Jackson, which is home of the world-famous Jackson Hole Resort. Cody had a huge surprise in store for us, the Buffalo Bill Center of the West, which is basically a big museum. This place was state-of-the-art, and it was massive. One could easily spend several days inside checking out a variety of interesting exhibits and artwork. When we headed off to Jackson, we first traveled through Grand Teton National Park. There is simply no mountain range as uniformly imposing as the Grand Tetons. Further south, but before we got to Jackson, was the National Museum of Wildlife Art. Unfortunately, we arrived within an hour of closing time, so we chose not to purchase a pass to see what would have been the tip of the iceberg before we would be asked to leave. We did enjoy all the statues and carvings that were scattered throughout the grounds, though. Jackson is an interesting town, a very upscale kind of place. We basically got our cup of joe from Starbucks and moseyed throughout town. I'll close out this chapter with a final anecdote. Fishing Bridge RV Park was now the third RV campground we had been in, and we've been using the laundry rooms in all three places. With 311 campsites, the park is huge, and the laundry room was packed, even more so because about half the dryers had signs on them saying that they were out of commission. Amy was finally able to score a washing machine, but she was repelled by the stench of perfumed laundry detergent and what looked like mats of dog hair around the lip of the machine. Still, it was what was available, and we had to have clean laundry. Once the washing was done, we still needed to find the dryer, so I started checking out the out-of-service signs. The first one I went up to, I just pressed the coin return mechanism repeatedly, and wouldn't you know it, several quarters emptied into the return tray. I kept pressing until they stopped, and then Amy had Amy put the clothes in the dryer, and I carefully inserted the coins once again and hit the start button. The dryer started drying our clothes. Well, if one dryer was out of service because it was plugged up with coins, how about the others? I tried the same trick on the other dryers and returned many of them to active duty status and pocketed the change while I was at it. I think that we came out ahead even after paying for our washer and dryer, and the rest of the campers were most appreciative. June 16th was our departure date, and there wasn't a cloud in the sky. A perfect day to travel 211 miles to our next destination, which would be the Walmart parking lot in Pocatello, Idaho. While we would miss the peace and serenity of Yellowstone, we were also looking forward to getting plugged in again to civilization. High on the list was having Camping World look over our Invisibrake situation to see if they could troubleshoot why it was acting in such an intermittent fashion. And there was a Camping World store just west of Boise in a town in Meridian, our next destination after Pocatello. A few days prior to leaving, I had looked below Gypsy's engine and found more than just a drop or two of the phosphorus dye that the AC mechanic from Coeur d'Alene coated the joints and clamps with. Gypsy was going to need a date with a mechanic soon. And since the motorhome was literally our home now, how would that even work out? We'd most likely have to find a pet-friendly motel to stay in during repairs. We were a few days away from our 1-month anniversary of living out on the road, and despite Gypsy's problems and our Idaho tenant, it had been a great beginning.